So working in a user's environment, that's one thing, but be able to facilitate tens of thousands of users, that's something that users in generally are not interested in, but as an organization, you're very aware of that where the value of OpenSourceDay brings you is that my whole organization has access to the same document if that is necessary. So it's not limited to the group, but everyone, thousands of users, can access the system. So for this, Alfresco has clustering, high availability, and reliability. It allows you to scale to tens of thousands of users. And we can manage large volumes of content. So we have customers running millions of documents in a repository. And also, if one server fails, there is also the other servers that can take over. It is very similar as database replication, database clustering, or operating system clustering. But in this case, it is at the application level. So there's nothing you need to do beneath the application itself to make sure that the clustering is working. So it is a very comfortable way of creating a very reliable environment. The next step is, okay, so I have my users using a single repository, but maybe I have branch offices around the world that also need access to the content, and maybe the network is not reliable enough and not fast enough, or maybe I have huge files, like movies or drawings, and therefore people need to have access locally to that content. But to be able to have local access to the content, but still work in teams, you need to have replication. So Alfresco allows users to replicate content from one system to the other one, where you have access, local access to the documents, even if the network is not that reliable or fast, and you can collaborate around different documents. And the replication can go in two ways. So it's a master detail replication, but you can also replicate back to the master repository. A typical use cases are, for example, a price list, drawings, brochures that you would like to have available in all offices in the country or around the world. So now we have the architecture drawn, we have the systems in place. One of the ways to access these repositories is via a new open standard. It's called CMIS. And CMIS stands for Content Management Interoperability Services. It is defined by all major ECM players in the field, like Microsoft, Dokumentum, IBM FileNet, Oracle, SAP has also been involved, and also Alfresco was part of the founding members for the standard. And you can see CMIS as the SQL for content management. So SQL is a more or less standardized way of accessing databases, and CMIS allows you to do the same thing with respect to content repositories. So if you have any kind of content repository, you can access this repository via a standardized way. So this allows you to switch from repository to another one if you're not happy with one. So for example, if you are using Dokumentum and you've built an application that is using CMIS, you can, with the switch of the knob, you can go to Alfresco and use the same application in the same way as before. So all these great functionalities and all this great product was actually initially started by two senior people that are in the enterprise market for quite some time, which are John Powell, who's the current CEO. He used to be the COO of Business Objects, and John Newton, who was one of the founders of Dokumentum. And John Newton brought all his experience that he gained over the last decades by building the Dokumentum product, and now he has built and used all this experience to build a brand new product, Alfresco. So we have over 3 million downloads. We have 1,400 customers, subscribing customers over the globe, and we're working with a very big team of partners that are doing implementations on customer sites. So some of the customers that we have on this slide are presented here. It's not just the smaller ones, but you will see that they are really the industry leaders that have chosen Alfresco for their enterprise content management solutions. Our biggest markets are the financial market, insurance companies and banks, and also the government. Those two are the biggest ones. For example, the European Commission is using Alfresco to do all the translation of the documents that are created within the European Commission to all those languages. So you can imagine that there are about a dozen languages that documents need to be translated to. So for that to manage, Alfresco is chosen to be the underlying repository and tools to do this. Another, in the media sector, we have Activision. Activision is one of the leading game platforms and game development organizations in the world. For each new game, they launch a new website, and these websites, in a very short period of time, will hit millions of users. So to be able to have this flexibility of quickly adding new websites and being able to service millions of users, they're using Alfresco for this as well. On the top you see NXP, that's a semiconductor company. They're using Alfresco for contracts management. Also their contracts need to be reliably stored to make sure that you have access to all your contracts. So these are a few of the customers. And these customers typically have chosen Alfresco to start new projects, new applications. But what we're seeing as well, and more, is that Alfresco is not only used for new applications, but it's also used to get rid of the limitations they have with existing software. And very often this is FileNet, Documentum, OpenText LiveLink, etc. So an example is P&V Insurances. It's a mother company which has several brands. And within the company they are about 3,500 workers. Also they have agents, so it's a very big company. And they are scanning about 8,000 to 10,000 documents a day, with sometimes a peak of 50,000. So they need a repository that is not only scalable and is able to service a large number of users, but also allows them to eject a large number of documents in a very short period of time. So at this stage they have about 15 million documents stored. Just to give you an example, that is not just a small repository for a small number of documents, but it can be very robust and scalable. And they are coming from a system where they were hitting some limitations with respect to flexibility and scalability, and they were heading there to about 1 million. Another customer that migrated from FileNet is Auckland Savings Bank in New Zealand, and they are currently injecting about 60,000 documents a day, and they can do that within 20 minutes. So the system was tuned for this particular job, but they were able to reach this kind of high volumes by very closely looking at the architecture and with our partners optimizing the system so we can handle these loads. And you can imagine within a few years' time, there will be about 100 million documents in this repository. There are some other customers that migrated from Documentum or FileNet. I don't want to go into details, but just to give you an example that Alfresco is not only used for new applications, but we see more and more that existing ECM players are being kicked out of a company because of various reasons. It could be the high cost. If you want to go to the next level for your traditional ECM, you need to pay a high price. Or if you want to customize, or if you want to roll it out to more people, sometimes the cost here is an issue. Sometimes it could be an architecture limitation. Sometimes it could be that the customization is going to be so expensive that it is easier to migrate to another system. So also in Poland, we are building quite rapidly a good customer base. For example, the Polish Committee of Standardization has chosen Alfresco to run as a portal environment, and about 3,000 users will start using this system. And there are also a few other customers in Poland that have adopted Alfresco. So Gartner is also now starting to look at open source. Gartner and open source has always been a kind of a tricky situation, in particular how Gartner rates companies. But we are seeing now that Gartner starts to also understand and adopt the open source thinkers and also the customers that believe in open source. So within the Magic Quadrant, for those of you that are not aware of what the Magic Quadrant is, on the horizontal axis, that's where you have the completeness of vision, and the vertical axis is the ability to execute. And most companies want to be in the top right corner. So Alfresco is the only open source ECM vendor in this Magic Quadrant, and we are the fastest moving positive mover over the last 2 years. So the traditional ECM players, they feel very comfortable in that corner, upper right corner, but they are not moving. And the main reason why they are there is that they are very big and have a very solid customer base. But they are not moving, so they're not making progress, they're not innovating. So if you got stuck there, you got stuck there. Alfresco, we are very quickly moving in that direction, where we want to be head-to-head against those traditional players, but of course with a much better offering.